Hey everyone, I'm Cappy and welcome to Beyond the Plate. This is a podcast where we sit down with the world's culinary elite to explore their journey into the food industry and the social impact they have made in their communities. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you've listened before, we're glad you're back. Okay, picture this. In the heart of the Great Smoky Mountains of eastern Tennessee, where this crisp air sweeps over these rolling farmlands, you're going to find Blackberry Farm. This isn't just any place though. You see, it's one of the premier destinations for hospitality and culinary excellence in the United States. And at the helm of the restaurant, the barn at Blackberry Farm, is Chef Cassidee Dabney. If you're not familiar with her or this incredible spot, well, that's exactly why you're here. Let's go beyond the plate. Hey everyone, quick heads up, we'll be dark next week and back with a brand new episode the following week. But before we go beyond the plate, we want to give a shout out to our friends at Martin's Famous Potato Rolls. Martin's is an all-American family-owned and operated company founded in 1955 and headquartered in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. They are the number one branded potato roll in the United States, and as I like to always say, they can make almost any burger taste better. You know, I say that a lot because Martin's has been a great partner to the pod since early on, but quite honestly, they make sloppy joes taste better. They make hot dogs taste better, grilled cheeses taste better, and so many sandwiches. They just have that soft, pillowy texture that really can't be beat. Martin's believes in giving back to their community and the world around them. Through volunteering time and donating resources, they support hundreds of charitable organizations such as food banks, after-school programs, disaster relief, and others that provide sustenance and comfort to people in need, both close to their baking facilities and abroad. To learn more about Martin's and check out some great recipes, go to potatorolls.com and follow them on social media at Potato Rolls for recipe inspiration. And by the way, inspire me, inspire us. DM us on Instagram and tell us your favorite way that you enjoy Martin's. Martin's, we thank you. Cassidee, we like to start every episode off with an audio test. So let's go with 5 of something for you. Name the 5 Foothills cuisine products or produce you're loving right now.
Okay. Okra, corn, peppers, tomatoes, eggplant.
Yum. You sound great. Let's do this. Today's guest is the executive chef of the barn at Blackberry Farm, one of the most special places in the United States and beyond, in my opinion, and many people's opinions. More on Blackberry Farm coming up. Our guest grew up gardening, canning, and cooking, and so it only seems natural that she wound up at Blackberry Farm. She's been nominated multiple years for the James Beard Awards Best Chef Southeast, and Blackberry Farm was recently named #1 resort in the South in the 2024 Travel and Leisure World's Best Awards. Doesn't get much better than that. Please enjoy this episode as we go beyond the plate with my fellow Four Seasons alum, Chef Cassidee Dabney.
Well, what Four Seasons did you work at?
I was at Los Angeles at Beverly Hills.
Nice.
Yes. I still talk about that program and it comes up from time to time on the podcast. And I was so intrigued by the company, the orientation that they do. Yeah, the whole thing. There's things I do in my day-to-day life that I'm like, Four Seasons. So I was curious for you, are there things that you learned there that you still use to this day?
Oh, 1 bazillion%. They're so organized, training of management, training of cooks, just kind of, I was there when it was each resort had its own chef and each chef had its own identity. And I don't know if they're still doing that, but it was just really nice to travel around from resort to resort and see everybody's vision of what they thought the food should be there. It was really interesting.
So cool. I see a piece of fuzzy or dust on my floor at home. I'm like, don't walk over it. Pick it up.
Pick it up.
Anyway, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. I'm curious. We like to start all these episodes off with kind of learning where you came from. So I know you spent your summers in the family garden. Is it safe to assume here's where your love of gardening began?
I think that's where my hatred of gardening began. And then it has somehow pivoted until I'm now that person that grows things and watches my eggplant get bigger every day and squeals in delight when I could pick it. But I hated it as a kid because it was a chore. You have to pick the green beans again today, and then you have to get the okra. And okra made me itchy, and I hated it. And yesterday I picked okra, and I was like, I love my okra.
Who do you credit for this, the hatred or the love?
Oh, it's my parents. They're big into gardening and growing their own food and then harvesting their own animals and just having a super hyper connection to where your food comes from. And yeah, they definitely made me think about that. that as a child.
Growing up gardening and canning, how would you say that influences like your cooking and your menu?
I mean, it's all I do
everything.
is think about how I can use every last little bitty bit of everything. Because if you're growing it, you're going to use it somehow, some way. You're going to preserve it. So preserving the seasons, and like you need that food to carry you over into the winter. It's not just like, this is a fun little hobby. It's like we are stocking the pantry for later on in the year. Like it wasn't just like a fun thing. It was a necessity.
So you're the daughter of a wildlife biologist in the Forest Service?
Yeah, he's retired. He was a forester and a wildlife biologist, and we would just move from national forest to national forest. And they were always obviously very rural places. So I have this like connection to just kind of being alone in the woods is my happy place, because that's what I did.
Can you survive out in the forest for quite a while?
I don't know for quite a while, but probably a week.
So funny. Okay, so you went to New England Culinary Institute. When and why did you decide culinary school is for you?
Okay, so you know that little test you take senior year of high school where they try to figure out what you should be when you grow up? Mine told me that I needed to be a chef when I grew up.
Really?
For real. And the only pamphlet my tiny little K through 12 in the same building school that I went to in Arkansas had was for the New England Culinary Institute.
Oh my gosh.
So it's the only one that I actually knew of. I didn't know that others existed because it was all I had. And the internet's not really a thing yet. So it's just like, okay, this pamphlet I got, I'll go there. So
that's so cool. Did you love it?
A lot. Obsessed with it.
Would you do it again?
If it was the same time.
I have this conversation with random chefs who love culinary school, and I'm like, if I could like pause life, like pause time and do it again, yeah. But like obviously life changes.
Yeah. I learned so much because I had no base of knowledge in the culinary arts. Like I didn't know how to do stuff. So it was like I was green. I was a sponge. I was absorbing everything they said. I wanted to pay off my student loans in real time. So I picked up jobs constantly, like always just like, oh, I can pick up a shift here, here, here. So I was always just like hungry for more and more and more knowledge. Again, this is pre-internet. So I couldn't just Google whatever I wanted to know about. I had to just like do it in real time to learn about it. So
interesting. Do you encourage young cooks on your team that may not have been to do so, or most of them like gone through it?
I don't think you have to go to the expensive, super elite like CIAs and Johnson & Wells. I think so many community colleges have really good basic knowledge programs, and that's all you really need to know. You need to know your ratio for vinaigrette. You need to know how to make a stock, dress a salad, basic stuff. We're there to teach you at the farm what else you don't know. So we're kind of like a learning kitchen in a way, because we're so rural, so we don't have all the people applying for jobs that you would have in a big city. Like people that move to East Tennessee want to live a little slower paced life and have less of that big city moment. And most of them come from little bitty places with their community colleges and their culinary programs.
I have to imagine it's a combo of maybe people from the area versus also cooks that move there to work at the farm.
Yes, we do have a lot of people that move here to work, and they maybe have spent a little bit of time in New York or Chicago, and they're like, that's not my vibe. I would like to, get behind a tractor on the way to work. That's the kind of vibe I want. So
and not honk your horn and scream.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's different. It's a slower pace for sure, but I think it's a fun place to be.
Okay, so your background includes stops in add-on, or correct me if I'm wrong here, Germany, Boston, Atlanta, Hawaii, Arkansas, Wyoming, most of which we're spending time with Four Seasons.
Correct.
Can you elaborate more on like why it's special, like that Four Seasons family?
The Four Seasons for me was like the Forest Service was for my dad. You could work there for X amount of months to a year and then go on to another project. And since I had always been this kind of mobile kid, never really putting down roots anywhere, I liked the idea of having the same level of standard and quality everywhere that I went. And I could always expect that baseline was going to be the same. And then I would learn, outstretch from there. So the Four Seasons was a great place to be. It was also pretty chill to be, and I hate to bring this up, it was good to be a place to be a female cook because you had the infrastructure of HR programs, and then they had like some really, I didn't ever feel bad And you know what I mean? There's not those bad situations that you heard about in the 90s, late 90s in independent restaurants. So it felt safe. They pay really well. And then they have this like really great organization and structure.
That's really interesting that I think about it. I was there like early 2000s and there was a number of female cooks, many of which I'm still in touch with that are incredible.
You would find a lot more female chefs in environments like that because they definitely did feel safer.
So of all the places you live, which one impacts your culinary decisions today?
Boston.
Really? Can you give us an example?
Okay, yeah. So Boston was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I would come into work 2-3 hours off the clock, hide in a corner on top of a like rack or whatever, and try to get my prep done because it was so intense. There was so many details. It was so much more than anything I had ever done. And like, honestly, it was my first real job out of culinary school. And I feel like I wasn't prepared for it. So I was trying to like keep up with everybody. And then I learned, because it was my first job out of culinary school, I learned more there than I have anywhere else. Like in a short amount of time, like huge amounts of knowledge, not about managing necessarily or people or the other details in the kitchen, but just about technique, food preparation, cleanliness, speed, all of those things. It was such a huge learning experience for me.
That's interesting. And so you came to Blackberry Farm in 2010?
Okay, so I had come to Blackberry Farm from Wyoming in 2005. And I worked there for a little over a year, left for some personal reasons, and then came back in 2010.
Got it. And so tell everyone who doesn't know what Blackberry Farm is. Where is it? What is it? Why they should go? All the things.
Blackberry Farm is this magical resort in East Tennessee. It's in Wallen, Tennessee. It's 4,200 acres. It's about 50, 60 rooms, depending on what's going on. We have a working garden. We have a farm. We have a spa. We have multiple restaurants on property. And if you just want to unplug, unwind, and eat really good food for a couple of days, check it. It's great.
My wife and I were lucky enough to recently stay at Blackberry Mountain and further lucky enough to have a dinner at Blackberry Farm, which is incredible. And for us coming from Chicago, it was an hour flight and you're in the middle of this magical place that feels like you flew to another country.
And maybe another time.
Yeah. That too. It's incredible. Highly encourage anyone and everyone to check it out. So you were first a sous chef there and then executive sous. And then in 2015, you were named executive chef of the barn at Blackberry Farm.
Yes. I was terrified.
Tell me more.
I was terrified. I didn't know that Joseph was leaving, even though he was my boss. And Sam Bell was like, hey, do you have a couple minutes to go talk? And I was like, yeah, boss man, let's go talk. And he sits me down in the tack room, which is like a PDR on the back of our dining room. And he was like, hey, I just wanted to see if you would be interested in being, the executive chef of the barn. And I was like, holy shit, I don't know if I am ready for that. And he was like, oh, you're ready. It's time for you to do this. And he's like, I got your back. No matter what, we're going to get you there. So it was scary.
Really? More pressure, more nerves?
More pressure. Because when you're not the executive chef, you always have the executive chef to hide behind. So any mistake, everyone in the dining room is not like, oh, the sous chef must have messed up the XYZ. It's always like, the chef messed up the X, Y, and Z. Or this isn't creative enough because the chef isn't creative. And so all of a sudden there was just it's all on me now, So it was heavy.
Did it take you a while to become comfortable with that?
Yeah. And I used to be terrified of public speaking. And I was terrified to have that full ownership of not only the cuisine, but of the team. Because you never realize how much weight the chef is carrying when it comes to managing the team and keeping morale high and all of the not so glamorous things that the chef has to do. It was just all of a sudden, it was just it's yours, take it. So I did, and I just started running with it.
How do you deal with pressure?
I'm the kind of person that if there's a fire in the building, I'm going to go find where the fire is, and I'm going to try to put it out. I love it so much. It is a fuel for me. Stress and pressure, I adore it.
Sam was right. You we're ready. We're the right person for the job. You are the right person for it.
I love stress, and to the point where it's probably bad for me how much I like stress, but I like it.
When you get an honor like #1 resort in the South in 2024 Travel and Leisure, how do you make sure you stay fresh or relevant?
I love getting an accolade, but every time I don't get on one of those lists or one of those groupings of other places of similar stature, I have to just be like, we didn't get on the list. It's okay. And then if I do get on the list, it needs to have the same weight as if I didn't get on the list. Like, I need it to not put me into a place where things are easy now because I'm on this list or whatever it might be. They're great because it helps with staffing and it helps bring some guests in the door. But like, in my mind, for every list I'm on, there's 25 lists that I'm not on, and you have to keep it humble and you have to keep it pretty real.
So the barn has these for people who may not know, these multi-course menus of the signature Foothills cuisine, which you're welcome to share more about. But as I mentioned, I was lucky enough to experience a dinner there. Are there people that come in that just like don't have a clue of what's happening, or do they generally know?
They're like, oh, this is an all-inclusive resort, and I've been to those before, and I'm gonna get the chicken tonight, you know?
How do you explain it to them, or how do you explain what goes into the food, the dishes?
I try to keep everything really approachable and easy for guests because we do have a lot of those first-time guests that don't know what they're getting into. So I want to keep it so that everything is something my mom could understand, or my dad, or whatever, a family member. And if you keep it in a place where it's just like approachable, regardless of the amount of technique and like crazy stuff that goes into all these dishes, if you keep it to a place where they're like, that was delicious, I wouldn't have ordered that anywhere else, but that was really good here. You build this trust with the guest, and then once the guest trusts you, you can kind of have a little bit more fun every once in a while, for sure.
I like that. You explain that so casually, but it's so like strong and important, I think.
Yeah, it's not about ego. A lot of chefs, I think, do stuff to make other chefs think that they're interesting or cool, or like try to push boundaries. And I'm just here to make the guest happy, and it's not about me, and however that plays out.
Is there like a favorite dish on the menu right now?
I have a couple right now. Yeah. So tomato season is hot right now. And I really like to celebrate tomatoes, and we get them all in, and they're typically from our local farmers. Some of them are really beautiful, but like we just had a bunch of rain, so they're kind of bursting open and they're not pretty. So we slice those up and then we grill them. You with me so far? It seems pretty basic. Grilled tomatoes.
Hell yes.
Yum. And then with the ugly bits, the like super ugly bits, we make tomato paste. And I know that sounds like you can get a can of it for $1 at the grocery store, and who gives a shit? It's a tomato paste. But when you make your own tomato paste, the other day we made 30 quarts of tomato puree, and it cooked down to a scant 5 quarts of tomato paste. And it took us 2 days, and it is not like the canned stuff or the tube stuff. It is a different beast. It is, wow. It is completely different. You put a little spoonful of that into your grilled tomatoes, and you go from like, oh, yummy, grilled tomato, to like, holy shit, what is happening? This is not a tomato. I don't know what's going on. And then again, because we're in Appalachia and we don't throw anything away, all of the tomato trim gets cooked down in butter. So we take equal parts tomato trim and butter, and then we clarify the butter with this tomato trim, and it flavors the butter like this crazy tomato. And then we just simply make a tomato, like a spuma out of that. You know, you have butter, you make a hollandaise, you charge it, it's delicious. We have dehydrated tomato powder. If you needed more tomato, we got you. And then we put some fresh tomato in there too. So like a bite is of this smoky, stewed, hyper tomato paste, fresh butter, powder, and then I make this really fun Nigella seed cracker that you can either dip in there or just like smash it in there. You get after it, you know, have fun. But it's tomato, and I like it.
That's so interesting. Like tomatoes in all of the ways.
All of them, except for the cracker doesn't have any tomatoes, but I don't think it needs to.
It's kind of simple and not. It's all around the tomato, and you could probably just serve the grilled tomato with great sea salt and be done, but you can also serve it like a spuma and raw and paste and this, and someone takes a bite of that and they're like, whoa, what is going on? This is amazing.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of people, like, if my mom were to eat it, she would be like, oh, this is a really good tomato soup. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. I'm glad you like it. But like the paste, there's like a big sticker right in front of it in the pot. It says stir me. It's not a stir me please. It is not a question. It is a command, stir me. And people just
walk by and stir.
For 2 days straight, we all have to stir.
So it's on super low heat, like in like a rondo or something?
Yeah, super low heat in a rondo. And then if it starts to get sticky anywhere, whoever catches it has to put it in a fresh rondo. It is such a big deal. And we'll make it probably 3 or 4 more times before the season's over. But yeah, tomato paste. Who knew? Who knew something so silly could be so good?
Oh man, I'm hungry. And our tomatoes are not going to be like your tomatoes here in Chicago right now. Oh, there's some decent ones, but I digress. Restaurant culture, it's changed over the years. Would you say Blackberry Farm has also changed or evolved in these 14 or so years or more on and off you've been there?
I don't need to talk numbers. It makes me feel old. Honestly, not so much. And that's what drew me to Blackberry in the first place, because it was a very inviting kitchen. Like in Boston, people would sabotage your mise en place. You know, like people would steal things. They would dump stuff out. Somebody put water in your oil to ruin your night. You know, it was just like, this terrible place. Everybody here is so nice and they're also helpful and everyone has your back. And it really does feel like a team. I played lots of team sports growing up and it feels very much like a team, to the point where I take a lot of the coaching things that I learned when I was playing group sports, and I do more of like a coaching method, you know, like, no guys, we had a really bad service, but we're better than that and we're going to do better. Like that kind of supportive group.
Are you competitive?
Oh, hell yeah. Big time. And I won't ever, I say it, I'm like, I'm not competitive. This isn't a competition, but we're going to have to kick their asses. Highly competitive.
What would you say are the biggest challenges at a place like Blackberry Farm?
Honestly, it's staffing and keeping up with produce, because we're out in the middle of nowhere. So everything takes a couple of days to get here. It can be overnighted. We're a landlocked state. We don't have a ton of we have trout, which I love trout. So I embrace trout. But like I said earlier, staffing's rough, because like, how do you talk a 21-year-old into moving out of a big, exciting city and coming to small town America and seeing what's going on?
When we were there, like driving through towns to do an activity or something, it was always pointed out, like restaurants, whether it's Knoxville or like the surrounding town, of like, oh yeah, that restaurant, the chef used to work at the farm. Oh, that restaurant used to, and that's really cool.
It is. And then those are the restaurants I go to because I know those people and I know that I'm going to get like good quality stuff there. But it really has made a kind of like a little group of chefs that we all have worked together. It's fun.
It's so cool. So we've talked about numbers and making you, and I'll throw me into that category, feel old. You've been there for a while. Like, is that a risk? Where do you go from here?
Honestly, 14 years when I was in culinary school was what they told you would be like before you could be a sous chef. You know, not 14 years, but like 8 to 10 years being at a place or a couple places, and then you might be ready to be a sous chef. And 14 years feels like 5 minutes. Honestly, it goes by so fast because I'm having so much fun and I absolutely adore the place and I love what I'm doing. I think if it stops being fun and I stop what I'm doing, then I might have a thought about moving on to something else. But currently, I love it. I know that doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Like, why would you just stay there? Because I like it. It's pretty simple. And it makes sense for me because I love doing the food that we do. And then because I was raised in very rural places, I love being able to do the caliber of food that we do and then also have a quiet kind of life with my dogs and my garden and hanging out.
For the record, my day job is with Rachel Ray, who I've worked with for 18 years. And so I feel you. And when people are like, what's next, this and that, I'm like, I like my job. Like I wake up and I'm like excited to do what I do. And I am never like, what the hell am I doing here?
Right. We're lucky as hell to be able to say that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I had a call with someone the other day and they referenced that. They're like, being somewhere for so long is actually a testament to like you and your relationship with the brand of the human, all those types of things. So you recently had an Instagram post of the Thai lotus flower cookie, which looked incredible. And you said, I'm paraphrasing, you were taking a little time to play with food and that you love finding a recipe that's new to you and you make it over and over until you have a good grasp on the ingredients, the technique, the history. And you ended it with, it's important to stay curious. My question is, what drives you every day to stay curious and work as hard as you do?
I think I'm just a curious person. Honestly, when I was a little kid, I was so thankful that my parents had an encyclopedia set. Because if there was something I didn't understand, I would just go thumb through it and find the answer to it. Or my dad has a huge resources for plants and wildlife collection of books. So if I found a mushroom out in the woods and I didn't know what it was, I would just go mushroom book, this region, look it up. I think I'm just a curious person. And I do think that sometimes seasonal boredom kicks in and you're like, I kind of did the tomato thing and I'm doing the pepper thing now. Let's do something I haven't done before. So then you just stumble upon something like the lotus flower. And then you're like, I'm going to try that out. And the thing that I learned, I think most was once I tried to not follow the recipe in the beginning. I was like, I'm a chef. I know what I'm doing. No, I didn't. So I followed the recipe to the T, like on the third try, and it came off perfectly and all these things. But I learned that the lime water is incredible. It completely changed the texture of the cookie. And I just use like pickling lime water that you would get like lime to make hominy, because we make hominy. So then you just mix the lime with water and then let it sink to the bottom and then use that as like a portion of your water in the recipe. It changed the texture of the cookie. And so then I'm like, okay, how many other cultures use lime water? Because limestone's everywhere. And then you like go down these rabbit holes and then the cracker on the tomato that I was just talking about, I was like, I bet it would be better with lime water. And it was.
Really? What does it do to the texture?
It makes it like crunchy, flakier at the same time. So I can imagine it would be amazing in a pie dough or anything that you're looking for, a flaky and a crunchy at the same time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So cool how that works, huh?
Yeah. So it's just like little bitty adventures that you have to take down. You have to go down the rabbit holes to find, was I looking for lime water as an ingredient? No. I was looking to make this cool looking cookie, but then my takeaway was lime water.
Yeah, love that. Name 3 words your sous chef would use to describe you.
Funny, stubborn, and probably funny again. Hopefully they would think empathetic, maybe, but it could also be like funny. Probably funny. I try to keep it funny
I like
most
that.
of the time.
That's good. I think that's good. When you hear the words great chef, who comes to mind?
I think Michael Tusk was the first person that came to mind just for me right now. He's a very driven, very smart, very kind man. I've always, admired him. But to be honest, I've never had a chef crush on anyone. I just see people as being human and that they probably have a lot of human in them and they've got the flaws. And I try not to hold people to maybe an unjust standard. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but like I don't think it's fair.
A couple weeks back, we had Chef Danielle Balut on the podcast, and he has this book called Letters to a Young Chef. So I was curious, the best piece of advice you were ever given or that you give to cooks?
The best advice I was ever given was like, don't get into it before you're ready. You're going to need to be a cook for a while because this is a career. Don't be hungry to be a sous chef, because once you hit sous chef, it's really hard to go back to line cook, and line cook is where you learn the most. And so I was never like bummed out about not getting, I was, but I knew that I was going to keep learning and keep being in a position as a cook for a long time. And that was great for me. So that was really good advice. And then when I'm giving cooks advice, I say, spend the money on the shoes. Get the good shoes, because you're on your feet 12 hours a day. Suck it up and buy the good orthopedic shoes. If you want to be in this industry for a long time, your body's going to have to keep up with you. Buy the good shoes.
Love that. Great advice. All right. I want to talk about social impact. I was mentioning you a little bit earlier. Our podcast celebrates it with all of our guests and learning how chefs and restaurateurs and bartenders we've had on and have on keeps, our team inspired, and you all have your own way. Maybe it's a specific organization or a cause or whatever it may be. So I'd love to hear any community or social impact work that you have done or do at the farm or in the community.
I definitely volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club. I try to do it at like once a quarter, just something fun, get the kids out there doing some fun stuff with food, like a healthy thing, and then just almost like a food craft thing, and just have them playing with food, keeping them curious about food and then nutrition. And then I really do love what No Kid Hungry is doing. I've done a couple of dinners for them, and that's just a great organization. I think there's a lot of food insecurity, especially in our region, that needs to be addressed. And I think that's really important to get nourishment to these kids that don't necessarily have that in their lives.
Yeah, love that. 2 fantastic organizations that I'm very familiar with. So thank you for mentioning both of them. And I don't think I've said this yet this season, but I've said it plenty in past seasons. I always say to anyone listening, give what you can. If you hear about one of these organizations, you don't have to have all the money in the world. You can give your voice. It could be $1. It could be your time. Find a way and a cause that's meaningful to you. It could be 30 minutes a month, whatever it may be.
It could be some coloring books. It could be something just as simple as that, or some toys that your kids aren't using, or an educational whatever. The Boys and Girls Club, they need it. You should think about donating to them before you donate to other places.
Love that. Love that so much. All right. Want to do a quick speed round?
Okay.
A few questions. Number 1, what did you have for dinner last night?
Oh, I made a chickpea and kale salad for meal prep, and I just had some more of that. Pretty boring.
Name a smell in the kitchen you love. Tomato paste. Just kidding.
No, I do love it. It gets kind of gross after 2 days. I'm going to go with onions and garlic.
Name a smell in the kitchen you hate.
Veal bones roasting. I hate that. It's disgusting. It's gross.
What pisses you off in the kitchen?
When people walk over the thing on the floor, the fuzzy thing, like if there is a piece of parsley on the floor and I see like 5 people walk over it, I will lose my shit and I'll start being like, did anybody see this parsley? And they didn't, apparently. I was the only one.
It's so funny. What makes you happy in the kitchen?
I really like it when the vibes are good in a kitchen. And normally when the vibes are good, like everybody's just kind of having a good time. That's when, because we have an open kitchen, that's when the guests start coming up to us and they're like, that was so good, or this was this. And you get this like great feedback from the guests. And you know that it wasn't just because the food was so good. The food was so good because the vibes were so good in the kitchen.
Yeah, I love that. Last question. Do you have a favorite late night snack?
Right now, it's these little dehydrated soybeans with salt. They are truly disgusting. They're very salty. But for some reason, that salty, crunchy snack at the end of the night is all I want. I have little pre-packet portion packages of them. I normally drink a quart of water with them because they're so terrible and they're so dry. It's like eating sawdust, but currently that is my favorite go-to snack when I get home.
Really funny. Okay, so closing it out here, you all do some incredible collabs at the farm and over at the mountain, not to mention some of those concerts that look insane. I want to know, give me your ultimate night. What band is playing and who's the guest chef cooking with you and your team in the kitchen?
That's rough, man. That's not fair. That's rude. Skip.
How about, is there one coming up soon that you're excited about?
Noah Kahan's coming up soon.
Oh, fun.
And honestly, I couldn't have told you anything about him until everybody's like, he's got that Stick song. And I was like, yeah, I know that song. But so that's coming up. We've really had a lot of really fun musicians. But I think one of my favorite nights that we've ever had was it was the entire team from Noma. And Rene Redzepi is as charming as you would think he is, and truly genuinely kind and nice and super talented. His team was all there radiating the same kind of good vibrations that he had. And it was just my team was like, yes. And then his team was like, yes. And then we just had this incredibly fun night, playing loud music and serving all this really fun food. That was a really, really, really fun night. The team from Millennia, we went out into the dining room and did the dessert on the tables.
Did you? Amazing.
And there was smoke and it smelled like grapes and the whole thing. I was like, holy shit, we're in the barn and this is happening. This is incredible. And then next week we have Danielle and Gavin Kaysen. And I love Danielle so much. Haven't done anything with Gavin, but I hear nothing but good things. So I'm really excited about that one. And then an event I did a couple of weeks ago. Honestly, I was a little scared to go. I'm a chef ambassador for Krug Champagne. So we do a lot of events with these Michelin starred chefs, and we don't have Michelin stars. We're in Tennessee. Tennessee doesn't do Michelin. So it always seems like they're a lot fancier, than we are. And it's true, they are. So there's this intimidation.
You think they think you're fancy?
I don't think we're that fancy.
I know, but Blackberry Farm is the shit. And I feel like chefs want to go there and do a dinner. And
yeah, I guess I don't feel that way because I don't know. I definitely don't feel like we're fancy. I feel like that was fancy. Danielle and Gavin coming, that's fancy. And, maybe if I worked in their kitchen for more than an hour or two, I'd be like, they're not as fancy. They're fine. But the whole idea of them is much fancier than the barn. I mean, we're just a barn. We get excited about grits.
Same.
And then they have all this other, these crazy ingredients and technique. And I think we have a different definition of luxury.
That's fair. That's cool, though, from both sides. This was great. I appreciate you taking the time. I loved seeing the property and I loved having you share the property in this episode. And I think you have some incredible nuggets of info for young cooks and older cooks. And I'm excited for everyone to listen to this and hopefully make their way out to
Walland, Tennessee. Yeah. We have a gas station that's also the post office. So
Awesome. Cassidee, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
well, thank you so much. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks again to Chef Cassidee Dabney. Find her on Instagram at Cassidee. To learn more about Boys and Girls Clubs of America, go to bgca.org. And to learn more about Share Our Strength, go to nokidhungry.org. We'll share a link in the episode notes and at beyondtheplatepodcast.com. This episode was produced by myself, along with Ian Cohen, Joel Yetton, and Sean Petrosian. Our digital media producer is Sarah McClellan-Mead. Our music has been composed by Goldford. Find him at iGoldford. As always, special shout out to my wife, Katie. If you have not started following me yet, you should. Find me across all social media at On Cappy's Plate, or go to beyondtheplatepodcast.com and keep up to date with Beyond the Plate. Beyond the Plate is also on social at BT Plate Podcast. If you have a moment, we'd be grateful of your support by rating, reviewing, and even hitting that subscribe button to the podcast. Don't forget to join us next Wednesday for an episode of Beyond the Drink, our companion podcast to Beyond the Plate, brought to you by our friends at Ford's Gin. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Plate. I'm Cappy, and remember, there are never too many cooks in the kitchen.